seventh session topic is Breaking the 18-month Barrier, Rethinking Payments Testing in the Age of AI. Let's welcome our speaker, James Daniels, SVP APAC, Fime. Put your hands together for Mr. James.
Hi everybody, good evening. Thank you for being here. Wait. All right, let's start with the start. So thank you GFF for inviting me, and thank you NPCI as well. I'm always impressed when I come to India. The payment ecosystem is just crazy. It's so vibrant that it's just amazing, and we see it through this event. I don't know of any other payment event that are so vibrant and so many people and so many launch at the same time. It's quite impressive. I love that energy. It's very innovative as well. And I think by now India probably has the most digital transactions in the world, by far. The one thing that I find strange, though, is that we have this super high level of digitalization on one hand and these innovations around product, and we're still very slow around testing. It still takes 18 months on average to launch a new product. So when we're used to instant payments and everything being instant, and we still take sometimes over 2 years to launch a new product, there's a bit of a paradox here, right? So this is what we want to discuss a bit today. Testing is not as glamorous as talking about new products, right? But at the end of the day, if you design a beautiful product, but it takes 2 years to market, you have wasted those 2 years, right? So here we want to discuss a bit why it is the case and propose a number of solutions. So innovation is fast, we just said, right? We went from plastic cards and batch settlement to instant payment, to digital wallet. But outside of that, testing is already super slow. So the 18 months, I mentioned earlier, was a global study we made globally. It's not specific to India, but we've talked also with a number of players in India, and the numbers kind of match, right? So you may be a bit faster, a little bit slower, depending on where you work and where you are in the chain. But overall, it seems like it works. So in the next few slides, we'll talk about a few other things, just a little bit of a waiver here. A lot of the slide talks mostly about acquiring and processing, and so it's more about the card world, but we realize in instant payment, everything is almost the same, except a little bit easier and simpler, right? But it's also the same on the issuing side. So when I say acquiring, don't be focused too much on that. It's more, the whole thing is more about host testing in general. So why does it take 18 months? So first, specifications. Specifications are more and more complex, right? We have new rails, new technologies coming up, and people capable of actually understanding specifications are quite rare. So how do you translate a specification into a test plan that makes sense, that will guarantee that you have a launch that will work? It's not easy. First one. Second is the volume of test cases. So when you are in the compliance world and you want to get a new terminal or a new card program certified, the number of test cases might not be huge. Where you are in the regression testing world, it goes in tens of thousands. We had a recent client where we implemented 83,000 test cases. It's huge, right? And then there's limited access to simulators. So whether you're a terminal vendor and you need to test with your acquirer, you're an acquirer who needs to test with the scheme, the acquirer sandbox must be available, the scheme simulator must be available. Usually you need to book that a few weeks in advance. And then you go and do some tests, and of course sometimes test fails. Your session is over, you need to book another slot, which is in another month. You've waited 2 months. Right? And the process is very manual. Right? So you're still executing tests manual and validating cases manual. I love that expression. It's called eyeballing. Every time I hear the expression eyeballing, I can see someone with big eyes like this trying to review a report to see if it's right or if it's wrong. It's kind of a shame we still do this manually today, no? And then environments are fragmented. So you've got physical test cars, simulators, host systems, everything is separated. And it's a complex ecosystem with lots of steps when you follow a transaction. Right? And finally, there's no traceability across the end-to-end process. Right? So you never have that view. So that's the issues. This is a bottleneck. Let's see what we can do to solve those. To solve those, this is what you would need. So if I assume that I am an acquirer or processor, but again, it'll be similar with an issuer or similar with a, I forgot how to use the initiator of a UPI transaction. Is it called an initiator? Or? It will be quite similar, right? So you need test cards, so obviously not in the instant payment world, but you need test cards and you need them available. You need dozens of profiles that match the number of schemes that you're working with. You need host simulation and host testing because you need to exchange messages across multiple protocols around the clock. Live host systems are rarely available, as we mentioned just before, so simulators are essential to represent the host behavior for terminal testing. Dedicated host testing is needed to validate that the current processors can handle authorization, clearing, settlements, and the whole process. Right? Test case management. Thousands of cases, sometimes tens of thousands of test cases. Managing them and sharing them across team is a pain. So we had a meeting with an acquirer not long ago where they have 8 teams involved in the test process. Right? So just managing test cases for this 8 teams is already a nightmare. And then project visibility, you need project visibility. Without project visibility, you have no confidence. You feel like you're starting all over again. You need to have KPI, you need to have execution history. And of course, you need to be able to track progress because you have a number of stakeholders that also needs to be informed. And automation. So we'll go over a little bit of automation, but automation, what we think you need is automation of the test execution, but also automation in the validation of those test cases. So the first step of the solution is, we think, it's a three-step solution. The first step is around simulation. The first thing is you need to recognize that it's not about one piece of the chain. Right? The whole ecosystem is complex. This side is ugly, but there is a reason. It's because the ecosystem is complex, right? So you want to be able to simulate any part because that removes dependencies, right? So if you take any part here and you can simulate downstream and upstream, then you can bit by bit test the whole chain. Then you can also step out and really do an end-to-end test that will give you the confidence that the transaction is going through the whole flow. So whether it's regression testing or simulation, API validation, tokenization, US testing, whatever it is, every step can be simulated and should be simulated. So third piece of the puzzle. Second piece of the puzzle is automation. So it's not about automating one step. Each step can be automated, but the value is really about automating the whole thing. So first you need to plan and scope projects digitally. So you can choose test plan instead of choosing in manual spreadsheet which are the test cases that needs to be applied for this specific case. You need a system that tells you, you want to test this, this is what you need. The testers are here. Press of a button, we execute the test cases. Then you need a robot to execute the test on the terminal side. Okay, we'll talk a bit more about this in the next slide. And then you need a host simulator that will manage all these transactions. So that the transactions can be done over different protocols. And if you are in that world, you'll know that every company has its own protocol. There's not much standardization on that part of the business because that's where some of you still believe that the intelligence is. That's a strong differentiator with your competitor, and therefore it's unique, but therefore it's more complicated to test. So you need a simulator that has all these protocols or on which these protocols can be developed easily. And finally, logs needs to be validated automatically. No more eyeballing. I think this is important. So the real breakthrough will be not to automate a single step, but automate the whole journey. We've done a study some time ago, and if you take a whole, it was on a certification case, not a regression test, but on certification, if you take a whole certification test of 6 months, usually the testing part is actually only a couple of weeks. Everything before and after is a lot of time wasted in communication, in filling a form, changing again because there was the wrong form or the wrong version, or explaining why this field should be A and not B, and etc. Right? And you got this back and forth and back and forth. There's a lot of wasting time. So this is where digitalizing a process and automating this whole project saves a lot of time. What makes a big step as well is that in this whole automation, often the part that's hard to automate is the management of a terminal. You need to press the keys. Well, that's not really a problem anymore. There are robots who can do that, right? Robots that are completely integrated in a suite of testing products that can be independent, that can be launched before you finish your evening, and you get your report when you come in the morning, right? They can also be launched or used by a different team when you're not using them. So if you finish your day today, but Europe comes in and they also have tests to do, they can remote access to a robot like this and do their own testing. That's when it becomes quite transformative, because it's 24/7 in the cloud, and you have robotic that handles the physical terminals. And then we're going to talk about AI. So I think it's going to be a little bit less glamorous than my colleague in the previous presentation, because again, it's still about testing, right? But AI makes a big change in testing in a number of areas. So the first one is it automates error detection across logs and flow. So you don't have, again, to eyeball to find an error. AI will tell you exactly where it is. But with an added advantage is that it tells you where in the flow. Right? Without AI, we only look at one piece of the element, and we find an issue here. AI will tell you where that fits in the whole flow. It's much stronger at root cause analysis and much faster. But again, it will also give you not only a technical explanation, but maybe a business explanation of what that means in the field. Right? If that field or that parameter was wrong, what does that mean if I go live? AI can tell you and give you that visibility and therefore that confidence that you know what you're launching. And it can give you predictive recommendation and solutions to prevent recurring issues. So it makes the whole testing process a lot smarter. It's turning it into a continuous intelligent process that keeps pace with payment innovation. It's not a wow effect, like other AI tools, as you can see. This is what we can do today. We don't know what we'll be able to do tomorrow, but we can also imagine that you'll be able to harness a whole lot of data from failed transactions, for instance, run an engine that will tell you exactly why these transactions have failed and provide recommendation into what to do so that don't fail in the future. AI helps us to go beyond also just the transaction. So here we've built a system to also test user experience. So this AI tool has been taught to go shopping and go online and build a cart, put an object in a cart for purchasing, go through a checkout experience, and will analyze through this whole process any friction. So AI here becomes really interesting because first it can shop a lot more than my wife or pretty much anyone because we automate across a number of websites. But also we can also run it on all sorts of different devices. So we have device farms that can test a website or a checkout experience over different looks and feels. And it will measure that against guidelines and provide a score. All right, so here then it's easier for you as a merchant or as an acquirer or even as a scheme to look at this guideline and to see how to adjust this checkout experience. And we've seen through different reports that adjusting a checkout experience can increase conversion rate by as much as 35%, which is quite high. So I went very fast. So if we take a step back, we already know that, especially in India, this industry is very innovative, very digital, but we're still taking a long time to launch new products. We need to think of what's happening in the future, what will happen in the future. The complexity that has been increasing is not stopping now. Right? So today, instant payment is the new normal. There's no time for downtime and no margin for error. So we already know that testing can't really be sequential. It needs to be instant and needs to be automated. But now we have new layers of complexity coming up, especially with digital credentials, digital identity wallet, that will add a whole layer of complexity into a transaction flow, but not only the transaction flow itself, because it's not only about transaction logic anymore, but it'll be also about authentication and whether it works consistently, securely, and if it's inclusive and it works across devices. So if we look at this today and we look into the future and what's coming up with, I'm not going to say the last word because we're not supposed to talk about it, that complexity will add a lot to the testing process. So if today you're taking 18 months on average to launch a product, once you add these layers of complexity, there's a high chance you go to 20, 24 months, maybe even more. So this is a result, a couple of cases, real world, that we have implemented. We easily get to 75% times reduction. So what does that mean? This is reducing 460 days in 110 days of testing. We've had a case only a couple of months ago. We've reduced 98%. So we were able to automate the whole testing process, which was also originally 460 days, but ended up in 8 hours. So the consequence of that is, of course, is a much more efficient team. So we had 80% reduction in the team. And that's always a little bit scary because we are afraid that these people will lose their job. But it's so far, in every case we've had, people didn't lose their job. They were actually starting to do something that are a lot more interesting in terms of, instead of working on testing, they started working on innovation and preparing for the next wave of technology rather than testing the current wave of technology. So in a sense, everybody wins. And then, of course, all this brings down to a serious operational savings. So in summary, I was supposed to be 40 minutes. I did it in 15, so you can have a longer evening. I hope you're happy with that. So in summary, we went for a model where we have manual test cases, we have to wait for slots, we have manual log reviews and fragmented environment, to a new model where we automate execution, we simulate, so we test always on testing. We have AI-driven testing and validation and a much faster time to market. So that's it. This was a little bit fast. I'm sorry if I went too fast. I think I missed a few things. I'm also eager to go for a beer. And before I take questions, just a little waiver. My colleague, who is a lot more technical with me, who was supposed to be here to answer questions, is not here. So you can still ask me technical questions, but I may have to write them down and come back to you later. So just a little bit of a warning. But please.
previously in the old model, don't we have any automation test cases?
We do sometimes, but it's not a lot of automation. It's still a lot manual.
Oh.
Yeah, very manual. I mean, you still take a card, go to a terminal, tap it,
So
tap it.
in the new model, how many test cases has been automated now from
Oh, we
83?
can automate. The 80,000 cases were all automated.
All automated.
In that example. And each case is different, right? So I can't tell you we're going to do 100%, but usually we automate close to 100%. Yeah.
Okay. Still manual is happening completely or like automated?
I don't think so, no.
Okay.
No. No.
Is it for all the level of testing, level 2, level 3?
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Hi. How did you manage to solve the problem of connectivity of different platforms? Like that still exists. You're not going to build that, right? You still have those multiple infrastructures which will come into play. How did you solve for that?
Simulation. We simulate them. Connecting, you still need to connect to them at some point, but you connect only when you're ready because you have simulated them and tested, when you're ready. So when you go, it works.
So you build like a replica simulation with respect to that?
The protocols, yes. So we have a deal with all the schemes, and whenever they have a release of a new protocol, we get the release early, and our tools are updated at the same time they launch new specification.
Got it. So it's not a one-time affair, but it's basically
No, it's yeah. There are new updates every month, literally every month.
Yeah, that's okay. Got it. Thanks. Well, that makes me think that isn't that going to be like quite expensive affair, like for the one who is really looking forward for it, like because kind of building a simulation and then also kind of making sure that you're upgrading with that?
But if we would do it for a single client, it would be prohibitive. But we do it for a lot of clients, so the cost is spread over. So it's actually very reasonable. Yeah. All right. Thank you then. Thank you.